Well, welcome back to another episode of TWiP Weddings. I am Bruce Clark, and this week I am joined by Mr. Bryan Caparici, as usual. Mr. Robert Evans will be joining us shortly. He's on the road, and he's going to be jumping in here pretty quickly. And we have a very special guest this week, Miss Jen Rozenbaum. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, hello.
Happy to have you guys here. So this week we brought Jen on because we want to talk to her specifically about boudoir photography and what can wedding photographers learn from the world of boudoir photography, and also how can wedding photographers look to incorporate it possibly into their business or maybe partner with other photographers to add boudoir services to their wedding services, because I think a lot of brides like to get some boudoir photography done before the big wedding day. So we're going to talk about that today, but before we kind of get into the show, we want to remind you guys how you can get participate in the show. We want you guys to get involved, and we've got lots of ways you can interact with us. First off, you can visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings, and there you're going to find the show notes for this episode, links to everything that we're going to talk about today, and there's also a place where you can leave your comments and your feedback, your questions. So we definitely want you to go there and participate. If you do have questions for the show, you can send us an email at twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com, and those will come to us, and we will try and answer those on the show, or your questions may inform a future episode of the show as well. If you're more of a social media person, you can also put out a tweet or any kind of social media post, use the hashtag TWIPWed, and then we'll keep our eye out for those as well. And we're on Instagram. We got to start doing a better job of that. I know I say that every week, and then another week goes by. And so we are also on Instagram, so we have to start feeding our Instagram feed with some shots from us. So we'll get on that. But you can follow us. We're at TWIPWed on Instagram. So that's all the ways you can get in touch with us. So without any further ado, let's jump into the show. And as usual, we're going to start out with our Picks of the Week segment. And this is where we get to share a photography-related item that we think would be a benefit to other photographers. And it can be anything as long as it is related to photography. And since we have Jen on as a special guest, we're going to allow ladies first. So Jen, what's your pick of the week for the fine folks out there?
Thank you. Well, I'm not a wedding photographer, but I am a huge fan of shoot.edit.com. They're an editing company, but what is so great about them is that they offer a ton of free material for wedding photographers, like how to 5 ways to make more money in weddings, all these different webinars that they offer, and a ton of guides that they give for free just to support the wedding photographers and really help them thrive in their business, which I think is awesome. So I would definitely, if you're a wedding photographer, I would check out shoot.edit.com and check out their free material. That's my pick of the week.
Perfect, excellent pick. They need to get the .edit domain. I wonder if they're going to open that as a TLD, as a .edit, and then they can just get shoot.edit.
Right, that would be great.
Perfect.
Excellent,
very good pick. Mr. Caparici, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. My pick this week. So here's the thing. I'm sure everyone's been in meetings, or they've gone to conferences, or even been at a wedding, and when you're in a conversation with somebody, to pull out your phone is considered sort of a social, faux pas, right? But so many of us do it, especially if we're having a conversation with somebody and they're like, oh, can you follow up with such and such? And so people will pull out their phone and they'll give themselves a little reminder. I find that to be a little bit offensive, and I don't want to put myself in that position where I'm going to be offending anybody. And so what I have with me that I love, and this is my pick of the week, is the Moleskine little journal notebook thing. It's pocket-sized. They come in packs of 3. And with it, I have a little zebra pencil. I'm showing a video of it here for those that are watching.
Yes, for the listeners at home, you can go watch the video of this.
Yeah. But basically, it's it's the size of an iPhone, but it's a really tiny little journal, a little notebook, and it's a really tiny little pen that just fits nicely inside of it. I keep it in my pocket no matter where I go, and that way, if I ever want to make a note, if I'm with somebody and I want to write something down to follow up on, this is like my go-to for conventions, conferences, meetings, anything like networking like that. So I never feel like I'm in a meeting with somebody and I have to pull out my iPhone to do something because I don't want to be offending them. So when I do it that way, it's also a conversation point because they're like, "Oh, wow, that's cool. That's so analog of you." And it's like
you know how to use a pen.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You see these things? Yeah, they're called pencils, and this is paper, and you put them together, and magic happens. So I love that. That's my pick of the week. They're Moleskine. They're really cheap, and they fit in your pocket, and they are a great analog tool for writing things down in a digital world.
Nice. Any specific place you buy them from?
You can get anywhere, Staples, any office supply store. I think even like Chapters and Indigo and like Books A Million, all the bookstores, all they have them as well.
Yeah. You realize now, though, soon you're going to be able to do all those things on your watch.
Yeah, this is true.
Right. Everybody's going to be, glancing at their wrists now instead of pulling out their phones, which is interesting because I read. We're going down a total rabbit hole with the Apple Watch, but the reviews are starting to come out now because the tech companies have them. And one of the feedback that they got was when they were looking at their watch all the time in a social setting, people were like, "Do you have to be somewhere? Am I holding you up or something?" Because it's when you're looking at your watch, people assume you're looking at the time, see what time it is. And they said, "No, I was just they'd get a text or whatever, right?" So it's going to be it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out once the Apple Watch is out in the wild and people start using it. So
out in the wild.
Out in the wild. Excellent. Well, great. Excellent pick. Excellent pick. So my pick this week, since we're going to be talking about boudoir photography, I thought this would be an appropriate pick. And Jen, you have some courses on Creative Live, specifically on boudoir. And so my pick this week is Jen's Boudoir Bootcamp on Creative Live. I figured that was would you say that's the best place to get started if you maybe are new to boudoir photography?
Thank you for picking me for your pick.
No problem.
Yeah, I would say the Boudoir Bootcamp on Creative Live is thorough. It's probably over 20 hours of education. I haven't timed it exactly, but there's at least 20 hours of education there. And we talk about everything from posing to business, pricing, creating custom sessions for your clients, lighting. I really talk about everything. I mean, 20 hours is like, I don't even know what else I could give you. So if you want to know everything, we talk about wardrobe and lingerie and how to partner with lingerie stores and some marketing and, it's really a little bit of everything. And if you have a boudoir business or you're looking to make a boudoir business, it's an incredible way to do that. There's also some bonus material if you buy the class, which is something, they have some bonus videos in there, and one of them is my favorite. It's called the Fly on the Wall Shoot. And basically what they did was they came to my studio in New York and just taped me shooting a client. It's like real, like I'm not teaching, you're just watching me shoot. Because I always find with these classes, it's so hard to shoot and teach at the same time and have it be as real as possible. So I had this idea of just coming in, just shoot me shooting. That's it. I don't want to teach, just watch what I do, and I'll make it as real as possible. So you get some bonus videos like that, as well as a bonus packet that will go over your pricing and how to come up with your pricing that you want. It has a free action in there for frequency separation and a whole bunch of great stuff. So it's, I don't know what they're selling it for right now, but whatever it is, it's definitely worth the money. It's a lot of education for the amount, because they were not terribly expensive over there at Creative Live. It's like the perfect price point. So when you break it down for everything you get, it's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously we're not going to be able to get as, in depth today on some of these things, so that's going to be a great, great resource. So I'm on their site right now, and it looks like the class you can buy it now for $199.
Yeah, perfect.
So, I mean, that's for, you said over 20 hours of content. That's fantastic. So if you're kind of new to this arena and looking maybe to get into that, check out.
And I get a lot of comments, Bruce, from people that are not in boudoir, that are in some sort of portraits or even weddings, that say to me all the time, I learned so much from you, even though it's boudoir. There's so much, and I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit today too, about how boudoir works with weddings. But there's a lot of information in there for anybody who's really running their own business, working with women in any capacity. There's a lot to learn.
Awesome, good stuff. And there he is, Mr. Robert Evans. Hey, look, it's Robert Evans.
I decided to show up.
Awesome. There he is. You're just in time.
I was a little tardy. I apologize.
That's all right. No worries. No worries. You were just coming from a celebrity wedding, weren't you?
Yeah. I was, signing confidentiality agreements and.
No, it's a celebrity boudoir portrait this morning. That would be appropriate for the episode today, don't you think?
Yeah. I don't think I've done that.
Okay.
There you go. Excellent. Well, welcome, Robert. You're just in time for your pick.
Oh, yeah, now you're going to put me on the spot.
Yeah, we're going to put you on the spot now. So we're just...
Well, I'm going to, since I am unprepared, I will just be very candid with everyone. I think I'm going to go with, I've shot it a little bit, but the new 35mm lens from Sony for the E-mount, since I am a Sony artist and I got to plug my Sony stuff. But they just actually announced 3 new, not just, but especially by the time you listen to this, but 90mm macro 2.8, 35mm, I think it's 1.4. And then I forget what the other one is, but I don't have the macro yet. It's not out, but I'm sort of excited about that because I'm more and more using my E-mount stuff and my A7 cameras as opposed to my 99. So that's the one lens of macro, especially that I'll use at weddings for, rings and things like that I still have to use my A-mount for. So I'm looking forward to getting an E-mount solution for that.
Very cool.
So
excellent. So once again, your specific pick was the Sony E-mount, the
35 millimeter.
35 mil.
The new 35, yeah.
Awesome. Good pick. We'll put a link to that so people can check it out. All right. So this week we're going to moving on to our next section, which is our listener question. And each week we choose a listener question to answer on the show. And this week we've got a question that I think is right up Jen's alley, but also Robert and Brian, feel free to chip in here as well, because I know you guys have shot some boudoir. So Michelle's wanting to know, she says, I want to start shooting boudoir for my brides, but I don't have a studio space to work out of. What are your suggestions for a location where I can shoot boudoir? Should I just rent a hotel room? I'm not comfortable bringing clients into my house for shoots.
Okay, fair question.
Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, fair question. Hotel rooms are a great idea. Sometimes brides work with hotels for their guests, or they're spending a night in a hotel. They might even have a connection with somebody at a hotel. They can help you book a room for them. Maybe it's nice that you do something in the bridal suite because that's where she's spending the night that she got married. But there's other options also. There's other studios. I mean, I rent my studio out sometimes to other photographers. There's tons of studios that just rent. That's what they do. And then there's also options like Airbnb, which will allow you to rent somebody's home or apartment or whatnot. I've done that as well. So there's a lot of different options. Getting creative is part of what's so fun about boudoir.
Oh, that's a great tip. I hadn't even thought about the Airbnb thing. That's great. Robert, Brian, any
Yeah, I thought Jen's idea about the Airbnb was great too. Like, I never thought about that as well. And I would sort of just, she touched on it, but elaborate more on it. Why, I guess if your bride wants to do it before as a gift, that's a different scenario. But I've done several of mine just on the day of the wedding, and we've just scheduled a little bit more time, prior to getting ready or any of that. So that always works out well because you're usually in a nice place on the wedding day as well.
Nice. Brian, how about you? Any advice for Michelle?
So I'd echo everything that Jen and Robert said. I have an arrangement with a local hotel, like a sort of boutique higher-end hotel, and I have, and it sounds creepy, but I have a day rate arrangement with them. So I basically can. You have to make sure that you know who it is that you're calling when you ask them for that, because they're like, "What do you mean day rate? What's it for?" So, but yeah, I mean, I actually do an email now, and I email the same person all the time, so they know me.
Yeah, perfect. That reminds me of my days in Japan when they had love hotels, and you could either stay for a rest or a stay.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So I mean, you have to be careful, but I personally so I don't shoot in a studio for anything that I do. So boudoir would be no different. So for me, I like the environment of a hotel, especially if it's a nice luxury high-end boutique hotel. So I just make an arrangement with that hotel that here's what I pay whenever I need the day rate. I go in, I book it out for 3 hours, and I can go in there and do it then and there. So I just have to book it within 2 weeks, which is sort of a bit of a snag just because it's a bit of a busier hotel. So I can't, say I need it for 4 months from now. So as long as I book it 2 weeks in advance, they've got the day open. I pay under $100 for the hotel room.
Oh, that's great.
Beautiful space for a deluxe suite. So that's the arrangement that I do.
Brian, you said you don't shoot anything out of a studio. Do you prefer not to, or is it just?
Yeah, I prefer not to. I actually, it's funny because I built a studio attached to my home, which is where my meeting space is as well, and the whole upper floor is 700 square feet, and we built it to be a shooting space. And I started doing it, and I just found that for me, for my style, I just didn't love shooting in a studio. I felt personally too confined in the space that I was in, and maybe I just didn't set it up properly, but for me, it just wasn't connecting with me. I like to work in new environments, different environments, things that I'm not familiar with. I sort of get a creative energy from being somewhere new. So I sort of like to create that in the boudoir sessions that I do on location. So
I think that's amazing. I applaud you for that. I actually have been in my studio for 3 years, and I pull my hair out. I'm bored to death within the first 3 weeks. I'm bored to death. And I've talked all the time about dumping my studio, and everybody always says to me, well, how are you going to have a business if you don't have a studio? So I think, I'm sorry, I'm taking over the show here, but I think that's such an awesome point, because it just goes to show you can have business if you don't have space, and it's scary to take that leap. But I also I notice for me, my shots are better if I'm somewhere else, because it just pushes me creatively. Where in my studio, it's like I just know what to do. It's so easy.
It's kind of the same idea. A lot of wedding photographers, I'm sure those that are listening can relate to the idea that when their clients say something like, "Oh, do you want to come and see my parents' house? Where I'll be getting ready, so you can know what the space is at where we're going to do pictures ahead of time, so that you can familiarize yourself and plan out your session." And I always say, actually, no, not really, because I actually want to be working on the fly, and I get a certain creative energy by having to just, fly by the seat of my pants and adapt with what I'm working with in the moment. So that's why I like working on location, even for Boudoir, because it makes me think on my feet.
Yeah, it goes to show. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was going to say, it goes to show how important. I'm a New Yorker. I talk over everybody. Sorry. I was just going to say, it goes to show how important education is, and certain, equipment is, so that you can walk. I say this all the time. You have two different toolboxes, right? You have your virtual toolbox, which is like your communication, your posing, your creativity, and then you have your, toolbox, your tangible toolbox, which is your lights and your cameras and your lenses. And it's so important to have them both filled and with you at all times. So wherever you are, you can make it work.
Yeah. Or here's an idea that I just thought of sitting here. Like most wedding photographers, you could do your boudoir appointments at Starbucks.
No,
that's not my. I'm just. But,
thank goodness there's a lot of them, because if you get kicked out, you just go to the next one and the next one, and there's like 400, so you'd be good for.
So
I've done this more for maternity portraits, and I started doing more because I said that I had the same thing, Jen. Like I had a studio, but I prefer to work outside, and because it's kind of like the same thing. But I started doing some of my maternity portraits, and of course you could do this with boudoir depending on of course your client's living space, but in their homes, because sometimes that's fun, especially if they have a nice beautiful home and you have a nice high-end client. You're in there, you're actually looking at suggesting where they might hang a portrait, or we do that for family portraits some of the time, so why not boudoir if they have a pretty bedroom? So I just wanted to throw that idea out there for anybody that like talk to your client and find out what their space looks like. And
that's a really good point. I've actually done that before as well, Robert. I've done that just for clients that they're more comfortable in that space, and it's also it almost makes the intimacy of a boudoir session, which is what we're trying to do, it makes it almost even more personal, which I think is really beautiful.
And access to all their wardrobe instead of just a few things that they brought.
That's right.
True.
Yeah,
that's a good
it's funny.
point.
My clients, they don't love that. It's weird because I would love to do that, but they, I think sometimes people want to get out of their comfort space, like they want to kind of create somebody else. So, it's just interesting. It's, and plus in New York City, forget it. It's like, welcome to my apartment. So,
I think another option, we don't do boudoir in our studio, but I have some friends that do it, and I've seen them do some even outdoor boudoir. So they'll go on location somewhere that's sort of private and a little bit secluded, and then they'll do their shoot outdoors. It gives it a bit of a different spin, a different, different.
I have a question for that, and this is just like, it's a little bit of a silly question, but if you're doing it outdoor, is it still boudoir?
Yeah, okay. Oh, I love that you just said that. that question, is it boudoir, is like, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me.
Yeah.
Because boudoir, I think, is whatever you want it to be. It's whatever you define it to be and what your client wants it to be. I mean, because people, that's like a question, I have a Facebook group. If anybody's on Facebook, if you look for Jen Rozenbaum's boudoir group, we have like almost 13,000 photographers in there, and people will constantly post a picture of somebody outside or somebody in a, on a car or something, and they'll say, "Oh, is that boudoir?" I'm like, "Who are you to define what boudoir is for somebody else?" So I think it's just very interesting. What is boudoir? Like, the boudoir word actually means nothing about photography at all. So I think that it's really whatever you define it to be.
Awesome.
Love it.
I like it. Well, let's jump into we've kind of already jumped into the topic a little bit, but let's really jump into the topic a little bit with our question. But before we get into the main discussion this week, we want to thank our new sponsor. So we've got a new sponsor here on TWiP Weddings, and our new sponsor is Animoto.
Yay!
Insert Animoto ad here. Okay, so Russell, when you're editing, this part comes out. So we'll come back in.
Keep me singing the Jeopardy theme song. That'd be great.
Yeah. So we'll come back in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to talk to Jen just a little bit about her Animoto experience and style that's on there. In 3, 2, 1. So once again, I want to thank Animoto for sponsoring this episode of TWiP Weddings, and we're fortunate to have Jen on the show today because Jen, you actually have been using Animoto for quite a while.
Yeah, I've actually been using Animoto since 2008.
Wow.
For real. Yeah, I love Animoto. I actually make a slideshow for every client. It helps with that emotional component, you know, of really getting them into their pictures, and it helps also with customizing. Like, I pick different songs for them, and I have actually a style. They asked me last year to create a style with them, and I did, which really works well for weddings and any type of portrait, but especially well for boudoir, because I feel the way it's laid out, you could really, you know, sometimes the pictures would overlap and it would change the color of the skin. So we really worked hard to make sure that the style group that I made worked especially well with boudoir, but it works with weddings also. It's beautiful. It's called Vogue, by the way.
Very excellent. Yeah. Good stuff. So yeah, so check out animoto.com/TWiP. All right, so let's get into the discussion. Let's really dig into it. And we brought Jen on today because we wanted to talk about boudoir photography specifically, and I think it's an area that it relates, and I think it correlates very well with wedding photography. I think a lot of wedding photographers will either get into boudoir photography because their brides, you know, want to do a boudoir shoot, or it's a way that they can, you know, sort of spread their business out a little bit, because wedding business can be a seasonal, you know, fairly seasonal, depending what part of the world you're living in. And so I know a lot of wedding photographers here, where I live anyway, in Edmonton, you know, we've got 6 months of winter, and you know, it's a quieter wedding season during those periods. So I know a lot that will do, you know, boudoir photography or supplement it with other types of photography. So that would be good to bring Jen on this week and talk a bit about, you know, boudoir photography and how, you know, it sort of could tie in with a wedding photographer's business. So first, I want to start just by introducing Jen a little bit and getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your approach to, you know, photography. How did you get into boudoir?
Sure. Well, okay, so I'm in New York City. I have a boudoir studio here in New York City. I've been shooting for about 6 years. So for all intents and purposes, I'm still sort of a newbie and I'm a baby in this industry. However, I do think that kind of specializing in the boudoir has escalated it for me. It's kind of like I have maybe 10 years experience in 6 years because I only shoot boudoir. But I did start with photography with just a few small weddings, some elopements in the city, and I never really loved it, and I didn't really understand why until a friend asked me to do a boudoir shoot with her. She was shooting 2 sisters, and she said, "Come along with me, I need a hand." I said, "All right, I'll come with you," and I loved it. And I came home and I said to my husband, "Forget weddings, I want to be a boudoir photographer when I grow up." And he was like, "Okay, whatever you want to do." And you know, at the time I didn't understand, but now I realize that really it was about the connection with the women. And when you're shooting, for me, when I was shooting weddings, it was about the connection between the couple, and I was sort of left out. You know, I was like just an observer. For me, with boudoir, it's really important for me to connect with the women, and I kind of call it like photographer therapy. So I'm sort of like the therapist with the camera, and they need some sort of therapy, and I heal them, and they heal me, and it's a really great connection. So that's the short version of how I got started in boudoir. And once I knew I loved it, that was it. I dedicated myself to that. I actually gave my weddings to other photographers at that point, and I just was like, I'm done. I just want to shoot boudoir. So that was about 6 years ago.
Awesome. Excellent. Bryan and Robert, do you guys shoot some boudoir as well in your studios?
I do a fair bit of it, yes.
Excellent. Robert, how about you?
I was wordy for you, Bryan. Yes, I tend to do boudoir for my brides or past brides. I have never, you know, specialized in that or gone after that. You know, there is, maybe we can talk about that too. I did a workshop once with Stacy Fraser. I'm sure you know who she is, Jen. And
yeah.
One of the things we talked about was male versus female, you know, shooting boudoir and the pros and cons of that. But yeah, I generally do it for past clients or brides that want to do it, that are already comfortable with me. I will do a select amount of spontaneous sometimes, even on the wedding day. I just did a wedding this last weekend down in Cancun, and I have one particular shot in my portfolio that probably one of my favorite images, one of my signature images, and she loved it. And she's like, "I kind of want to do that," and it's just a shot of. I actually had just shot the image she's referring to. I had done a shoot with this bride, and she was completely naked. But we, you know, we're very tasteful, and that's what she asked me for. I'm usually more uncomfortable in the bride's room than they are. But so I had done it, and then she had this little dress that was her mother's wedding dress that she customized and made it her cocktail dress. Yeah. And so I had photographed the dress, and I said, oh, hold the other dress up in front of you, to cover her up so we could actually shoot the dress of her holding it. And her bridesmaids, or one of them were in the room, and she's like laughing. It's a very genuine, beautiful image of her laughing, holding this dress up, but you can tell she's not wearing anything. And so my bride in Cancun this weekend kind of wanted to duplicate that. So we did, and it's like kind of fun. It just kind of like happened on the spot. But I would say more or less it's either on the wedding day, and I do an occasional. I have to say, like, I do enjoy that medium. I've done a lot of nude shoots too, but for me, if I'm going to do nude, it really needs to be very creative, very artful. For me, it's all about the location. I really sort of loathe the typical let's just meet and shoot in a hotel room, unless the room is like amazing, because everybody kind of does that. So I would say for me, like, if I gravitate towards my passion in doing that, it's really all about the location and having a very unique location, making that work. So I mean, I don't know, I might do 3 or 5 or 6 shoots a year. I don't know. It just kind of, sometimes I'll do it when I want to do it just because I want to change, and be inspired, and sometimes it's because my clients are paying me.
So that's a good segue, because that was one of the questions that I had, was kind of that male-female dynamic, right? So Jen, you mentioned that sort of that connection with your client is really important. What's your kind of thoughts on male photographers doing boudoir versus the female photographers doing boudoir? Because there's, our audience is probably 50-50 male-female in terms of in the wedding space. So what's kind of your thought process on that?
Yeah, I think that some of the best photographers, some of the best boudoir photographers in the world are men. And when men say to me, well, I can't be a boudoir photographer, I think it's just an excuse. Mm-hmm. I think if you do it professionally, then why not? I mean, men have something that I can't have, I can't teach, and I can't find, and that's seeing a woman through a man's eyes. I can't do that. I've tried. It's impossible. So I think that somebody that might book me might not book a man, and vice versa. Somebody that would book a man probably wouldn't book me, because we have 2 completely different visions. I think that, unfortunately, women sometimes tend to be judgmental of each other. I try really hard to fight that in my studio. We don't allow that in my studio, but I can tell you from my experience, I've been on the other side of the lens with a male and a female. And when I was shot by a woman, I kept thinking, oh, I hope she doesn't notice my cellulite, and I hope she doesn't see my, stretch marks and this and that. When I was shot by a guy, I was really nervous. I had not been in lingerie in front of another man in 15 years, so there was a little part of me who was really nervous about that. And then I just said to myself, you know what? He's a guy. He's going to think I'm hot, whatever. He's not going to notice my cellulite and all that other stuff. He's just going to see lingerie in a girl, right? So for me, I'm more comfortable being shot by a man.
We're fairly simple beasts, actually. Yes,
exactly.
We're fairly simple beasts, so.
Exactly. I didn't want to say it, but since you said it, yeah, I agree. So, I mean, like my husband said to me, you don't have cellulite. And I go, do you know what cellulite is? So there is a comfort level on both sides, I think, for the right people. So I usually recommend men have a female assistant there if they feel more comfortable doing that, or maybe have like a female hair and makeup team, so at least there's some sort of femininity in the room. When I was shot by a guy, I had a friend stay, and she said, are you nervous? I said, no, I'm not nervous, but I need somebody to tell me that, like, my underwear is up my butt, or, something. I need somebody to be able to fix that for me, because he's not going to do that. So I felt comfortable having a woman there, but I certainly think that men can make amazing boudoir photographers.
Yeah. So, Bryan, what are some things that you do in in terms of making that connection? Is it mostly brides that you're working with, or do you have clients that come in just specifically for boudoir photography that you never see them on the wedding day?
I'd say I'm probably 50-50. Like, I have some of my brides that do it, but then I also have a lot of just clients that are calling me wanting boudoir photos because they've seen what I do, and maybe one of their friends have done it, or maybe one of their friends is a bride of mine, and they're calling me because they want something similar. I would definitely say, I mean, I've had this. In fact, I did a whole interview. Molly Marie, who has a boudoir business, I think it's called Booty Camp or something. I did a whole interview for her course about the whole idea of me being a guy boudoir photographer, or doing boudoir portraits. And I think I sort of echo what Jen said, in the sense that it's more about connection than it is about making it this objectification of what you're actually doing. And I definitely I don't think I've ever had a boudoir session where it didn't start from my client's perspective with some nerves. It always starts with some nerves. But I really think that from that point on, it's how you deal with the session. It's how you are as a person, how professional you are, what kind of environment you set, and what kind of little wins you give them throughout the beginning of the process that allows them to enjoy the experience. And I've never finished a boudoir session where at the end they're like sitting down, hanging out in their lingerie, being like, this was like really fun. I had a lot. Like I feel so good about it. I feel this. It's and all of a sudden like they warm up to the experience. So it starts out with some nerves certainly, but I think that that's just the nature of the beast. And then I think from that point on, it's how you are as a person and what kind of environment you set for them. I always start every boudoir session at the beginning before they even start getting into their lingerie and all that, where I just sit down and I talk with them. It's like I'll make a coffee or whatever we're doing, and I just want to sort of like A, get to know them if I haven't already, but B, like talk to them about those kinds of things, like saying this is what it's going to be like, this is the sort of thing that we're going for, here's some of the things that I'm going to ask, like just warming them up to me as a person before I put a camera in front of my face and before they get in front of me with lingerie. So I find that that experience sort of gets them comfortable and warm quicker than if I were to just jump into shooting them in their lingerie.
Yeah, that's a good point. You mentioned, I think, Jen, you posted recently about your thoughts on having alcohol at the session.
Yeah.
Because you want them to be a bit nervous, right? You want that nervousness, and because you find that translates into better photographs.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time if I provide alcohol at the studio to help women relax, and my answer is always no. Always, always, always. Besides the fact that there's liability issues and there's legal issues and all sorts of other things, droopy eyes, drunk girls, whatever. The whole point of being nervous is that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. Like, you wouldn't go skydiving and be like, well, first I need to get drunk so I don't feel the nerves. Like, you're doing it to feel the nerves. That's part of it. And the nerves are saying to your body, we're doing something out of our comfort zone, but that's the place where we grow and we change and we learn. And if you don't feel those nerves, then are you going to have as good of an experience? Are you going to feel that relief after? Are you going to feel that I don't know. I just feel like feeling is living, and we've become a very numbing society. Mm-hmm. And my answer really to women is no, I don't want you numbing those nerves. Those nerves are important to have. They're telling your body something, So that's how I feel about it personally. Everybody's different, but for me, that's important that they have the nerves beforehand.
Well, if I can even comment on that too, I totally agree with that perspective from the client's perspective, but then also from the photographer's perspective, consider this. If you're getting them loosened up, through alcohol or whatever, then you're also giving yourself a bit of a cheat. Like, you're not really stretching yourself as a photographer and as a person to make them feel comfortable and to really be a friendly and create a warm environment. So, if you do that, then you're not really stretching yourself as a person and as a photographer to create that kind of environment. So
yeah, it's so true, Brian.
And stretch them, but stretch yourself as well.
Yeah, somebody said to me yesterday, well, but I offer champagne as part of the luxury experience. And I said to her, well, you know what? Champagne is not the only luxurious thing, okay? There's a lot of luxury. I mean, you're not just going to give her diamonds because it's luxurious, right? It's not about the luxury. You are the luxury. Make your experience with her the luxury, not the champagne. Do you want her running to her friends and saying, I had the best champagne at my photo shoot today, or I had the best experience with my photographer? Because the luxury doesn't come from the stuff that we use to fluff our sessions with. Mm-hmm. It comes from you. And so for me, I offer very simple, stripped down sort of sessions. It's not about wine and cheese and this and that. It's about you and me and what we're going to create for you and connecting. And Brian, you talked about connecting with your clients. Like, I always say boudoir is sort of like dating 101. So if you're a guy and you're single or not single or whatever, and you didn't do this stuff during dating, and I mean, I'm talking about, getting to know somebody, connecting on a more intimate level, I mean, these are important things to do. A girl wouldn't just walk in and you say, okay, take your clothes off.
Yeah.
It's weird, and even totally. For women to women,
That's so, only if you meet on Tinder. Then.
Right, exactly. We're not Tinder here, people. Yeah.
So Robert, you mentioned you do, like, a lot of your boudoir, it might be on the day of the wedding, so kind of before. Is that sort of part of the getting ready process? Usually, or
I will usually ask that question ahead of time, or if a bride, of course, really wants it, she will bring it up to me. And in the case of last weekend, she asked me on the spot, I love that picture in your portfolio, Robert, of the dress. Can we do that? I was like, sure. It was very tame. We just, took a few shots, and, I make sure she's comfortable, and, go in the bathroom, come out with the dress in front of you, and, like, again, it's the connection with your client. Even when they're getting ready, of course, I always ask where their comfort zone is. Do they mind if I'm in the room, or whatever. I think that's like super important. But yeah, I would say more, and I don't even know if it's fair to call that a boudoir shoot on the day of, like, especially what I just did. That wasn't. It was just a very spontaneous 5-minute, recreation of something she saw that I liked. I mean, it came out cute because she's a cute bride, cute dress, all that. But I think if you're going to do it on the wedding day, then you definitely need to set aside time for that. I liked, like I do the same thing that Jen mentioned. Like if I am doing even outside, I always make sure that I have a female in the room with me for their comfort. And I think, again, going back to the men and women thing, I think guys know what other guys like. So I think that's very helpful. But then to have the female in the room, like Jen mentioned, because they're conscious of what that girl's thinking, Yeah. Are my stretch marks showing, or are so it's a really great combination. And I really, whether it's hair, makeup, or I suggest they bring a friend to do that. So I like that aspect of it. I tend to, before I'm going to do something like that, I will ask the girl, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of your body, so that I have some sort of gauge on what she likes and what she doesn't like, so we can accentuate the breasts if that's it and avoid the buttocks if that's her least favorite, or vice versa. Find those things that, so going into it, what it is, and you do all these pictures of her bottom and then she doesn't like it. So I think that's important. Again, we go back to communication and really finding out what what it is that they like and don't like. And I do like, there is that sense of, somebody used the word intimacy in doing a shoot like this. Now I've done them, and I've done nude shoots one-on-one with the girl with no one in the room. So, and that someone that has to like trust me and trust them. And even someone that I just met, I did one time in Atlanta at my cousin's loft. I was there for PPA. I had a shoot scheduled and that person canceled, and she's like, I have a friend, and it just kind of happened because my cousin had a really cool loft, and this girl just showed up, was beautiful, trusted me, because she got a referral. But for me in the beginning, I was like a little like nervous, and I sort of eased into it myself. We did a lingerie, and and this girl specifically wanted nude photos, and because she was about to have a baby, or she had just found out she was pregnant, so she wanted pictures of her body before she had a baby. And we went through it. But there is something also, I think, special about, or just inspiring to me about, just that one-on-one intimacy with someone, and doing it and being vulnerable for both people, I think. And of course they have to trust you, but so sometimes if you have another person in the room, that person can be influencing what you're shooting or what you're doing, or whatever. So I see both sides of it, and I've done both sides of it, and it's helpful, and sometimes it's been to hinder. But it's definitely, like, for me, it's just a change from I guess what I normally do. I mean, I shoot a ton of things, but weddings is what I'm known for. But I mean, I'm a photographer. I'm not capsulized into a little box.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question, which was going to be sort of, if you're not doing boudoir photography, but what can wedding photographers learn from watching a boudoir shoot, or just looking at boudoir photography, in terms of applying that to the posing and that on the wedding day? What's Jen, you'd mentioned kind of in your Creative Live course, would be a good resource to watch, and you can learn from that. What would some of the things you think wedding photographers could learn from that?
Well, I think you mentioned posing, and that's a really important part of it. I think, so I come from a fine art background. I've been drawing nudes since I'm a young teenager. And when we first started drawing nudes, we learned to draw the skeletal system, and we drew it again and again and again and again. And then we learned how to draw the muscular system. Again and again and again and again. And then we learned how to draw the woman. And the reason, and it was frustrating because I was like, I didn't sign up for this class to learn how to draw skeletons. This is annoying. But the truth of the matter is, when you break it down that way and you learn really how the body moves and how it works, it's much easier. And you understand better when you see a woman why her body is doing certain things. Why is it sitting that way? Why is this skin this way, or her leg up this way, or why does this leg look smaller than that leg, or whatnot. So I think that that's also part of my success in posing, is that I learned how the body works. The same thing applies when you learn posing from a boudoir point of view. The woman is wearing underwear or less, let's say. We see a lot more of her body, and you can see what she would look like underneath that wedding dress. So even though she's wearing a wedding dress, you still need to pose her properly. It might hide some of the things that we don't like skin rolls or, a little belly here and there. But the truth of the matter is that if you learn how to pose with it broken down like that from a boudoir point of view, it will make your wedding pictures look better. That's my opinion. I don't shoot weddings, but think of it like the dress up dolls. Like when I was younger, you'd have the girl in her underwear and you put the dress up, the clothes over her. But the truth of the matter is the shape of her body had to be right to make everything look good. And it's the same idea. If you can take that girl and create a beautiful silhouette and then you put the wedding dress on top of it, it's always going to look better with the proper posing.
Yeah. Bryan, what do you think? How can a wedding photographer learn from the boudoir world, and how can they bring that into their wedding stuff, into their wedding shoot?
Well, so for me, it kind of goes back to almost what we've been talking about, and it's the idea that for me, boudoir is just another expression of what we do as a photographer, and it's just another way that we can connect with people. And it's almost, funny that obviously it's boudoir and they're in their lingerie and, the naked, but it's almost like the most naked way that we can connect with people, in the sense of there's nothing for us to lean on. There's no crutch. There's no, other thing that we can use to aid us in connecting with people. We just have to be the best version of ourselves and connect with people in a truly genuine, natural, authentic way. And so when you can do that in a boudoir session, oh my gosh, walking into a wedding day is like a breeze. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's a huge benefit. Of course, there's the posing, there's the lighting for boudoir is a whole other thing. And if you can really master lighting and sculpting light and seeing light in a boudoir session, again, you'll approach a wedding day and it's going to feel like it's so easy. Posing is the same way, just like Jen said.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's the one side of it. But then again, like I said, there's the connection side of it and the ability to make people feel comfortable and to create a warm environment for people. That's a huge asset that we have as wedding photographers, both on a wedding day, but also in a consult or in anything else that we're doing at an engagement session. We constantly, as wedding photographers, have to be able to quickly make a connection, make people feel welcome and warm. And Bruce has a dog on his lap right now, which is distracting me for those that are watching.
Sorry, my puppy decided to join the show for a few minutes.
Right.
This is Neko, everybody.
So
hi. So that's our job as wedding photographers. Yes, you might think that our job as wedding photographers is to take pictures at weddings, but I believe it transcends further than that, and it's to create that warm, comfortable, welcoming environment and make people feel good very quickly. And there's no better way to practice that than a boudoir session. That is the most stripped down version of that. Pardon the pun.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to, let's say they were a wedding photographer right now and they weren't currently offering boudoir services in their business, what would be some tips or advice to get started in that? If you wanted to add boudoir photography to your services.
I mean, like I said, I don't shoot weddings, but what I would think I would do is maybe pick my 2 favorite brides or my 2 or 3 brides I've spent the most money with me so far, and I would probably approach them and say, I'm thinking about offering this. How do you feel about having a shoot? Maybe even doing it for free for them, as an added service, and just start building your portfolio that way and working with women. I think that with boudoir, you really need a lot of practice. Like even if you're an established photographer right now, you need to practice boudoir. It's not as easy as it looks. Especially the posing, the communication, but these women already trust you, and that's the thing. They've already hired you as a photographer, so they already trust you, and that's a huge benefit. It's really boudoir. The first thing you need to do is build the trust. So since you've already done that with them, it's a good advantage, and I would just start building your portfolio that way. And again, like Bryan has said and Robert has said, then they start talking to their bridesmaids and other brides, and their recommendations that come for weddings will also come with boudoir recommendations as well. So, I mean, that would be my take if I was shooting weddings. I think that you have an advantage. You have a built-in clientele already, and that sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Robert, what advice would you have in that area?
I don't know how much more I can add to that. That was actually awesome advice. Of course, there's always if you don't shoot weddings, you could turn to friends and, ask your friends, and obviously, make sure they're comfortable with knowing that you're probably going to put their pictures on the internet, and, and that they're okay with that, because you'll waste your time if you do a shoot and they're not, regardless of who it is, I guess. But yeah, that's a great way. Just past clients, and I would say offer the first couple for free, and get yourself some stuff out there, and then ask for the referral. Of course, that's always the number one sales rule. Ask for the referral. Talk to those brides. If you have bridesmaids or friends that might want to do this, and I'd like to get this business going, and any help that you can give me would be great. Once you have some samples, maybe you can print up some 5x7 cards, or and advertise what you do and hand them out at lingerie stores in your neighborhood, or anything that's female related. Could be just regular clothing stores, shoe stores, where they're going to see it. That's definitely one way. Of course, we know there's many forms of advertising, but I think when you're doing something like that, again, going back to the connection, where it's all about the connection and people trusting you. So, you're going to build those connections through trust. And so people that know you and friends of friends, are probably going to work best in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. Good advice. Brian, anything to...
Yeah, I have.
Getting going on it?
So I have a few thoughts. First of all, again, echo everything that Jen and Robert said. But second of all, what I would really also encourage, photographers, gosh, it's so easy to become excited about this and then, go on Model Mayhem and try and find some models and go and do the shoot. But what I would encourage, and this is actually a practice that I implement myself, is I don't photograph models for Boudoir. Reason being is models will generally know how to move, how to pose, all those kinds of things. They've done that before. And if I want to be practicing my skills and making somebody feel comfortable that maybe feels a little out of their skin, and practice my posing with someone that doesn't know how to pose, putting somebody in front of my camera that knows how to pose is not going to help me with that. So I don't believe that that's necessarily the best way to learn and become better as a boudoir photographer, because if you start shooting models and then all of a sudden you're put in front of a client that has never modeled or done this before and she's nervous, you're going to be like, yeah, go do your thing like all my other boudoir clients have done, but they're not going to know how to work or how to move. So I think that that's just like a quick little caveat to that. What I would encourage photographers to really consider, boudoir photography, if you're newer in boudoir, can be very nerve-wracking. And as much as you may not think that that's going to be the case, when you get in front of that boudoir client, there's going to be a million things happening in your head, and you might not remember the basics. You might forget the simple things that you might feel are second nature to you. So what I would encourage is, before you start getting into that kind of session, really, really learn the basics. Like, get out there and become, like, get them second nature. Like, go through Jen's class on Creative Live, go to the conferences, go to workshops, read up on it. Like, do as much education about it as you possibly can. Become a master on paper first, and then instead of jumping right into a boudoir session, perhaps it would make more sense to jump into like a headshot style session. So do like, in a nice fancy cocktail dress, or do a session where the client is wearing an outfit, or they're wearing a tank top, or something that's not going to get you in that place where all of a sudden they're in lingerie, you've never done this before, and you're getting nervous all of a sudden. So like, kind of slowly ease your way into that, because again, lighting, posing, composition, technique, everything, on the skill set that Jen talked about earlier of your actual toolbox of shooting, you need to master that before you then get the boudoir client in front of you. So if you can practice that in a less intimidating environment for you, then you can ease your way into it, and then you can ease your way into the actual boudoir session where the client's wearing lingerie, and then you'll have been a master at the skill, you'll have practiced it in a much less intimidating environment, and then your boudoir will come that much easier for you. So I would say that's a good sort of path in my opinion.
So don't start swimming in the ocean before you can dog paddle in the shallow end.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's interesting, Brian, because the truth is that most of us will say that we do this to help empower women and make women feel amazing and show them what we see, because really the truth is, when women look in the mirror, they don't see what everybody else sees, period. I mean, I know, because I am one and I do the same thing. But the thing is that what we have to remember is we have a responsibility, and that responsibility is really important, because we can go and we can just experiment on women and take really horrid pictures, and then they look at the pictures and go, oh my God, this is what I look like, versus oh my God, this is what I look like.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that your advice is amazing. It's not what I did.
Right.
Unfortunately, I sort of just jumped into feet once I'm like, all right, let's do this. But I think when I look back, my photography sucked, but my personality and my connection with the women was always there. It was always there. So I was always able to make them feel good, because I gave them a good experience, even though my pictures were not as great as they could have been. But again, just be careful, because if you got one shot to impress this girl, and she might not ever see another boudoir photographer again. And even if she does, and she gets great pictures, she's always going to remember that time that she looked awful in her photos, and that's a big responsibility.
Yeah. Because with that responsibility to empower your clients also comes the potential downfall of if you do it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know, like you
Right.
said, you could disappoint them, and that's not the kind of environment
Right.
you want to create for them.
I mean, you never book a $10,000 wedding on your first week of being a photography business and show up at the Ritz-Carlton and try to shoot, you know, a $10,000 wedding. You'd fry. You wouldn't have a business. You know, it's really the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we deal, not that we do boudoir, but we've had it even where brides will come back and then they're just, you know, you do your best job that you can, but they maybe have some self-confidence issues and whatnot, and they just look at their photos and they're not happy. Maybe, you know, maybe they gained a little bit of weight before the wedding or something, and they just see themselves in the photographs and they just don't feel good about themselves sometimes, and it's hard to, you know, it's kind of hard to overcome that. You know, we always try to encourage them and uplift them and tell them they're looking beautiful, but sometimes, you know, there's other issues and things beyond our control that are going on in their lives and whatnot that maybe influence that. So I want to talk a little bit about building a team, because I know Bryan has to duck out in a little bit, so I want to get towards the end of the discussion here. But hair and makeup team, how important is having a consistent, regular hair and makeup team? Jen, do you have one? Robert, Bryan, do you guys have a regular team you work with, or do you leave that up to the client to bring their team in?
I'll let Jen take this.
I have a staff. I have a staff. I have a hair and makeup artist that I work with all the time, and I think that that's really important, because there's two reasons why it's really. The first one is that they know what I'm looking for. They know how to do photo. Makeup artists do. Makeup for a party is different than makeup for photos. So they know what looks good. They can take criticism from me. So I can say, hey, Diana, I need you to put more lipstick on her, or I hate that color, or that eyeliner doesn't work, and she will not even hesitate or give me attitude. She'll just fix it. This second, it's like have about an hour or so where she's in the studio space getting comfortable with all of us and how we connect together and how we talk to each other, and you know, without, you know, being in her underwear. So it gives that little bit of time where we just get to know each other, and we sit and we talk and we chat and we have fun girly time, and she relaxes a little. And the nerves always pick up again right before the session, but at least she knows I'm safe, I'm semi-normal, and she's going to have a good time that day. So I think that those are really the top two reasons why you should have hair and makeup on premise. Forget the fact that, you know, when they have hair and makeup done elsewhere, you have no control. They always run late. You know, they come in with, like, you know, horrendous hair and makeup, and then they say, well, I hate it, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So set yourself up for success and have your own team that does it.
Perfect. Bryan, Robert, do you guys have regular teams that you work with?
Well, okay, so let me preclude this by saying that I don't think that there is necessarily, you know, only one way to do it, and so I'll explain what I do, and it's probably a little bit against the grain in terms of what most photographers would do, and that's totally fine. For me, I do it with intentional purposes.
Wait, you do the hair and makeup?
Well, yeah. Oh boy, that's a whole other topic. Okay, so for me, I A, don't require hair and makeup, B, don't necessarily work with anybody or refer anybody, and C, to a certain extent, don't even necessarily encourage it. Again, I know, against the grain, totally, yeah, I know, it's like, Jen's like, no, Bryan.
You're blowing Jen's mind right now.
I think it's awesome, Bryan. You know, it's funny because this is what I'm talking about when I say, like, you see women the way a man sees a woman versus me. For me, what I'm doing is I'm not, okay, so makeup can be looked at two different ways. It can either be looked at as accentuating beauty or masking it. And so the way we work it in the studio is it's not really either one. It's more about sort of creating who this woman really is.
Right.
You know, it's letting her step out of her comfort zone and doing what she wants to do. But I do agree that often makeup really masks natural beauty. Yeah. But that's not why my clients come see me. So I can't do that, but I think it's awesome that you can.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing is, like, you know, clients will go to Jen or someone that does it like Jen for those purposes. For me, I do it in a way that is like, I want it to not feel like it's this big updo thing. I want it to feel like I'm able to capture the natural beauty, the intimacy, and everything that goes along with that, the confidence that is already there. And so I do everything that I can to not make it feel like this big event, you know, and I want to capture them being themselves and being genuine and being natural. And I want to show them that, hey, like, the way that you are is beautiful, and I want to show you that. So that's sort of the reason that I don't do it that way. And also, I've had the experience where, you know, a client would come in with all kinds of crazy hair and makeup done, and then look at the photos and they're like, that doesn't look like me. Yeah. So it's like when you don't have a team that knows what you're doing, like Jen does, you know, you run into the problem of, even if you do everything in your power to be the best photographer out there, you could show them pictures and they're like, oh my gosh, like I never look like that, my hair is never like that, my makeup is never like that, I feel like I don't look like myself in these pictures. And so I've had that before as well. So for those reasons, I try and make the entire experience as seamless and as natural and genuine as possible, and that's just my style of boudoir photography.
Yeah, that's interesting. That brings up an interesting thought. One of the things that we do with our brides, because we've run into that before on wedding day, where the bride will get her hair and makeup done, and then she sees it in the photos, and she's like, "Oh my God, like I look like a whore. Like I'm like the makeup's just like plastered on." And she's just like, "That's not me. It's not how I normally look. I look like a clown or whatever. They've just done too much makeup." So we always encourage them. No, what we do, because if they're not used to wearing a lot of makeup, and then suddenly they have it on, they don't feel good about themselves. So we often encourage them during the engagement session. Do a trial run of your makeup at your engagement session, so you can see how it's going to photograph, and then you can make adjustments on the wedding day. So I know it's not really the boudoir stuff, but it's a good sort of, I think, tip on the hair and makeup side of things is you want to look natural and feel comfortable as as who you are. So.
I think it also brings up another really great point, Brian, in that people talk about this market in any genre, weddings, boudoir, whatever, that it's oversaturated and how do I stand out, and there's so much competition. And the truth is, the more we talk, the more I'm like, my client would never book you, and your client would never book me.
Totally.
And if you can get that message out there, I mean, we're both boudoir photographers, for all intensive purposes, but we're so different, and it's funny. It's if you can get that message out and you can tell people really what you're about and understand what you're about, then your clients, your ideal clients, will really find you, and you won't email you, Brian, and say, well, I really want heavy makeup and lots of hair, because you're going to say, wait a minute, did you not read about me? Did you not read my blog or my Facebook page or whatever? Don't you get it? So it really attracts the right clients when you really put it out there what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think for me, something that the photographer listening right now can really take away from this whole conversation is, obviously there's more than one way to do it, but also B, it's that you must be intentional in what you do as a photographer and in how you run your business. I do things the way that I've explained it because for me that makes sense and I've designed it that way. But for someone just to jump, if someone wanted to do boudoir photography like I do in the way that I've explained it, but then, was all excited about having staff, hair, and makeup people like Jen does and did all that, like you could easily get pushed into that direction, but for the wrong reasons. So instead, what I always encourage photographers to do is to think about what you're doing and try and be purposeful and deliberate in what you're doing and design a business and a style and an approach that makes sense for you.
Yeah, I think that knowing why you do those things, that's the hardest part of what we do, because we do things, we don't even think about why we do it. When you really stop and think about why you do something, I mean, everything that you've said today, Brian, I pretty much do exactly the opposite. It's hysterical. Like, I work with models all the time, and you know what? I've only one time in my entire life found a model that really knows how to move the way I want to move it. Like, I am still the boss at my sessions, and if I hire you because you're a model and I know you're going to sign a model release, I'm still going to tell you what to do all day. So you can leave all that modeling knowledge behind.
That's awesome.
So I'm still going to tell you what to do. And I just think I love how we have completely different views on everything, and yet both still work and function and have a good time doing it. So I think that's great.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Robert, anything to add on the end of the hair, makeup, or anything in general just about boudoir?
No, I think one of the things that I picked up on early, and I wanted to say it at the right point, and I think this is the right point, that I think is really super important, and I know we've all talked about this before in the show, but it's something that Jen brought up early in the show, and she said, I shot a few weddings, and then I shot boudoir, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that's all I do, and that's all I do. And I think that's important. I think a lot of photographers try to be a lot of things. And I think we all can shoot many things, but I think it is important, you hear that over and over. If you really specialize in one thing, it'll probably get you further along faster than trying to be, a jack of all trades. So, again, take it for what it's worth, but I thought when she said that, I really liked it because she's like, nope, she identified her passion and she went for it. And 6 years later, she's, thriving and doing well and educating and teaching and I think that's the way to do it. So if there is, if you are one of those photographers that does a lot of things, but there is one thing that you kind of always gravitate towards, then you might want to think about, putting a little more attention towards that area in your business.
Excellent. Yeah. I like that. Very good advice. Well, I think we could probably talk again for hours and hours, and there's all kinds of other questions that I had for Jen, but I know Bryan has to duck out, and people are probably needing to get on with their days, so we'll kind of close things off there. So once again, we want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Animoto for sponsoring this episode. We also want to remind you, send in your questions, your comments for the show. Make sure you comment on the blog post or email us or post on social media. TWiPwed is our hashtag, or you can email us twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. So before we kind of wrap up, what's everybody up to, and where can we find you online? Jen, I'll start with you. What have you got coming up, and where can people find you online?
Sure. Well, my new most exciting thing is I have a book coming out this spring. You can find it on Amazon. It's actually a cookbook. It's 60 recipes for boudoir success, something like that. I don't even remember what the title is. 60 recipes for boudoir something or other. But it's a good book. It's about 60 different images, how I created them, some variation, lighting, posing, a whole ton of education in there. So you can find that on Amazon if you search for me. And don't forget, my last name is spelled with a Z, not an S. People screw that up all the time. So it's Jen Rozenbaum with a Z. So that's really exciting. I'm excited about that. I saw a psychic years ago who told me I was going to write a book, and I laughed because I don't know how to write anything. I'm a terrible writer, but at least I think so. But this book coming out, I have a lot of stuff on blog with a J, so it's JENERATIONS blog.com, and you can find, I just actually came out with a new wardrobe guide for boudoir photographers. It's an awesome 80-page guide for boudoir photographers to learn about all the different types of lingerie, what to recommend to different clients, what works, what doesn't work, different terms, different stockings, and what's the difference between a bustier and a corset, and all these different things. And the best part of it is it comes with a 6-page guide for photographers to give to their clients. So it's all written up. They just have to put in their own pictures, their own logo, and give it to their shoots, and it also comes with a checklist for their clients to remember to bring everything. So it's been really helpful. It's gotten some really great reviews, and I'm very proud of it. It was a labor of love, and I really think it looks great. So you can find that and all of my other products on Gumroad. It's spelled just like it sounds, GUMROAD.com/Jen Rozenbaum. And I actually just punched in a code this morning. The code is TWiP. TWiP. If you use that code, you get 10% off anything.
Hey, awesome.
In my store there.
Excellent. Yeah. I've had a look at that guide. You shared a copy with me, and I had a chance to look at it. And I learned all kinds of things about lingerie that I never knew.
Do I sense a new wardrobe for the next TWiP episode, perhaps? On
maybe.
Yes.
We'll see. Maybe I'll show up in a corset next week or something.
It would flatter you.
Yeah, yes. I would say, how do you feel about nude photography? And then I start taking my clothes off, and then they work. Yeah.
No, not nude photographer. Nude
oops. Yeah. Excellent. Mr. Evans, what have you got going on, and where can people find you online?
I am off again. I leave tomorrow night. I'm on a 10-day photo tour. LA, Tucson, San Francisco, and then back again. So wedding in LA, doing some Best Buy training in Tucson for Sony and Best Buy, and then a 16th birthday party in Palo Alto.
Wow. You need like a bus, like a Robert Evans bus or something to drive around.
I'd rather have my face on the side of a plane, really. But
yeah, sure.
But if you want to find me, see what I'm doing, of course, my website is robertevans.com. Twitter and Instagram are @RobertEvans. Facebook, Robert Evans Studios. And Google Plus is Robert Evans 101, I believe.
Excellent. We'll have links, as always, to those things on the blog post. Mr. Caparici, what have you got going on in the next little bit? And
well, this is my first TWiP episode in the new offices. So for those watching, you can see that this is different than where I normally am. And for those listening, it may sound a little bit different because I haven't fully got my whole soundproofing system set up yet. So I'm in the new Sprout Studio offices. So for those that have followed along, you guys know that we recently launched Sprout Studio, which is the industry's first all-in-one studio success software that basically marries online galleries, album proofing, sales galleries, studio management, and everything that a photographer needs to run their business. So we are out with the beta on that, and the whole team is now under one roof with our new offices. We've got 11 people on the team between developers and customer support and designers, and I am the CEO founder of that. So I have my own nice little office over here. So that's where I am, and that's what's new with us. But for those that haven't checked out Sprout Studio, that want to check it out, you can visit www.getsproutstudio.com, and you can check that out and join the reservation list to find out more information about how you can sign up.
Excellent. Fantastic. Very good. All right, and if you're looking for me, I'm teaching some workshops here in Edmonton the next couple weekends on off-camera flash and studio lighting, and then we roll into wedding season, and then we'll be kind of knee-deep in wedding season for the next 6 months or so. So
that's when we all hibernate, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So it'll just be hunkering down and getting into wedding season. We just wrapped up a shoot this last weekend. We went to a backcountry lodge and photographed a styled wedding on top of a mountain, which was really cool. It was my first time in a helicopter, so that was fun. So I hope to have some photographs from that up on our blog fairly soon. I have to get to processing them, but
maybe even our Instagram account.
Or maybe our Instagram account. Yes, I'll try. So, but if you're looking for me, you can find me over at our website, which is www.momentsindigital.com. And if you're looking for me on the various social networks, I'm at Bruce Clark, and that's an E at the end of Clark. So that's where you'll find all of us. Again, we'll have links to all those things in the show notes for this episode. So be sure to visit our website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings, and there you'll find everything we talked about today. So thanks again for listening to another episode of TWiP Weddings, raising the bar one wedding at a time.